Just hours ago, the newest recall notice shattered the frozen aisle. Yet again, America is being warned that what's hiding inside its freezers could be lethal. 7 frozen vegetable brands, trusted for decades, are now under fire and facing urgent destruction orders. The FDA admits contamination is spreading quietly, slipping into households coast to coast. But here's the real fear. If regulators caught this today, how many more brands are still skating under the radar tonight? How many seniors on fixed incomes, stretching $10 at the grocery store, unknowingly serve their families vegetables tainted with pathogens strong enough to cause kidney failure or death? How many parents packed lunchboxes believing they were giving their children safe nutrition, only to discover betrayal bagged in plastic? This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. Don't panic or get angry just yet, because in this video, we'll not only reveal the 7 dangerous brands, but also show you the safe alternatives you can rely on. Number 1. Endico. Just a few hours ago, on September 5th, 2025, the Food and Drug Administration confirmed what many feared. Endico's frozen peas and carrots and mixed vegetables, shipped across 7 states, are contaminated with Listeria monocytogenes. That announcement is fresh, raw, and sitting inside freezers right now. The recall notice insists no illnesses have been reported yet. But should seniors living on Social Security gamble their health on the word yet? Every bag sitting on a shelf or inside a kitchen freezer could turn from just cheap vegetables into a loaded trap waiting for the weak and the elderly. Strip away the polite phrasing of the recall, and what we see underneath is disturbing. Endico's failure wasn't even caught at its own plant, but at a Pennsylvania distributor. Imagine a giant company boasting about safety lets contaminated products slip into the supply chain until an outside test catches it. That's like buying a padlock that no one bothered to check if it actually locks. And for weeks, yes, weeks, these bags traveled from New York down to Florida before alarms rang. Such a potential death sentence disguised in frozen packaging. Think about who buys these bags. Older Americans stretch $10 for groceries. Retired drivers, factory workers, clerks, counting quarters at checkout. For them, a bargain bag of peas and carrots is supposed to be safe fuel, not a biological landmine. People weren't only buying food, but also the promise that it wouldn't harm them. Now that promise looks as thin as the plastic bag itself. And the twist here is Endico insists it's cooperating with regulators. But cooperation after the damage is like apologizing once your neighbor's house has already burned down. Why weren't the fire alarms, meaning tight testing, rigorous audits, transparent records, installed before? Where were the preventive systems when those vegetables rolled into supermarkets with a silent hitchhiker? The company's PR line, "No illnesses reported," sounds soothing, but it's because low-income consumers often don't report or can't afford medical confirmation. How many small-town clinics are quietly treating stomach bugs that may never be traced back to Endico's frozen aisle? Look to the future, and the picture is darker. If one contamination at a distributor slipped through, what about the freezing tunnels, packaging lines, or the water supply used for washing? Independent audits in past years have already flagged lapses in temperature logging and sanitation across the industry. If these issues are systemic, what's next? Salmonella, heavy metals, or an outbreak that finally makes headlines because dozens end up hospitalized? If razor-thin profit margins keep driving production, the next recall won't just be about vegetables. It could be about lives. And when that day comes, who will pay? Certainly not the executives. It will be seniors skipping rent to cover emergency bills. Policy loopholes make it worse. Distribution chains stretch across multiple states, but oversight still relies on slow, state-level testing. That lag is a crack wide enough for a pathogen to march through. Endico may blame the distributor may blame the logistics firm, and all the while, the frozen bag in your kitchen doesn't care whose name is on the lawsuit. It just sits there. So if they're caught today, what are they hiding tomorrow? If this recall needed a state lab to uncover, what about the corners still unchecked? How many more invisible grenades sit in the frozen aisle while executives count profits? Shouldn't every American demand answers before another cheap bag becomes another silent weapon? Number 2. Marketside. What looks innocent in the chilled aisle can sometimes carry the weight of a hidden verdict. Walmart's Marketside broccoli florets, packaged neatly in 12-ounce bags, were supposed to be symbols of trust. Clean, washed, ready to cook. Instead, they were flagged with the harshest FDA classification, Class 1, because contamination with Listeria is not a what if, it is a ticking clock. Imagine standing at the freezer door, pulling out what you thought was health in a bag, only to discover that bag was carrying a silent intruder. The shock isn't just that these products spread across 20 states, from Alaska to Arizona. The real sting is that the contamination was not caught by self-policing. It took Texas health officials through random testing to slam on the brakes. That's not vigilance, it's chance. And chance should never be the only safety net between an older American and a hospital bed. Over 35,000 bags were distributed, meaning tens of thousands of kitchens unknowingly stacked little green grenades right beside the frozen chicken and hash browns. Marketside is no small fry, it's Walmart's in-house. Brand supplied by Braga Fresh. And here's the gut-twisting irony. Just 3 years earlier, Braga Fresh was celebrated as Walmart's Produce Supplier of the Year. That's like giving a gold medal to a runner, then discovering they tripped the first hurdle in the next race. The award shines, but the broccoli wilts under scrutiny. If the best of the best lets listeria sneak in, what does that say about the so-called ordinary suppliers? Look closer at the timeline. Contamination was first noted in late December, but the FDA only upgraded it to Class 1 a month later. For weeks, households carried on as if nothing was wrong, steaming broccoli into casseroles, sprinkling it into soups. A retiree reheating leftovers may have been stirring more than vegetables. They may have been stirring risk into their own dinner bowl. That delay feels less like bureaucracy and more like betrayal, as if time itself was rigged against ordinary shoppers. And the broader question screams for attention. How fragile is the system that delivers our food? Convenience is packaged as kindness. Grab and go. Pre-washed, ready to serve. But in truth, it often hides behind overworked plants, sanitation shortcuts, and audits that tick boxes without turning stones. Walmart's supply chain is vast, but its very size multiplies risk. When cracks appear, they aren't hairline. They are highways wide enough for pathogens to march through. Picture the human side. A grandmother in Oklahoma, stretching her pension, believes she's serving her grandchildren something wholesome. Instead, she may have been serving danger with a smile. For people already fighting medical bills, this isn't just food safety, it's food sabotage. And the most bitter part? The press releases still sound polite. No illnesses confirmed. Return for refund. As if refunds erase fear. As if a receipt can balance the scale of betrayal. So what now? The future is not just about cleaning up this recall. If the industry keeps rewarding suppliers with trophies while skipping real accountability, the next contamination could be worse. Salmonella outbreaks, pesticide overexposure, or heavy metals slipping under the radar. History shows these are not fantasies. Multiple recalls in the past 5 years prove this is a cycle, not an accident. Unless policies tighten, Walmart shoppers will continue playing roulette with every trip to the freezer aisle. And yet, choices exist. If you want broccoli without the gamble, Green Giant Fresh Organic Broccoli has stronger testing standards and a cleaner recall record. Another safer bet is Earthbound Farm Organic Broccoli Florets, often sold at major retailers, with documented audits that dig deeper into safety protocols. Better still, pick fresh heads of broccoli from local farmers markets, blanch and freeze them yourself. That way, at least you control the chain from field to freezer. The ugly truth is this. Marketside's scandal isn't a single bad bag. It's proof that even giants stumble, and when they do, the people crushed are not executives. They are retirees counting coins and families trusting that green means safe. Number 3. Dole. Walk into any supermarket, and Dole's brand name beams at you in bold green letters, whispering fresh as if it were a promise carved in stone. But that promise keeps splintering into shards. On February 8, 2024, the company quietly announced a recall of select salad kits, brushed off as precautionary, because they had been processed on the same line as cheese already infected with listeria. Just a small technical overlap, they said. Except history shows that with Dole, these overlaps are less accidents and more recurring patterns. Rewind the clock to the winter of 2021 into early 2022. 180 varieties of salads, yes, 180, were pulled back from shelves across 44 states and parts of Canada. The reason? Listeria, again traced to harvesting equipment. At least 17 people fell ill. 2 died. That's not a technical glitch, that's systemic negligence hiding behind the plastic wrap. Go back even further, 2016, Springfield, Ohio. Dole's facility became the epicenter of a nightmare. 33 people hospitalized, 4 dead. Later internal records revealed they'd known of listeria contamination since 2014, but kept operations running for nearly 2 years before shutting down. 2 years. Imagine how many dinner tables those contaminated greens passed through. How many retirees thought they were eating clean. How many immune-compromised patients unknowingly faced Russian roulette with every forkful. And Dole's resume of recalls doesn't stop there. Between 2012 and 2015, bagged spinach, 7 lettuces, and other products were flagged for salmonella and listeria. Each recall was packaged with the same dull language, out of an abundance of caution. But abundance of caution should have prevented contamination, not just responded to it after families ended up in emergency rooms. When a company racks up this many strikes, can it still be called caution, or is it simply recklessness with a press release attached? Think about who buys these products. It isn't the wealthy hunting artisanal greens at boutique shops. It's seniors on fixed incomes, laborers grabbing something quick after double shifts, families trying to stretch a food budget without cutting out nutrition. For them, bagged salad looks like a shortcut to health. In reality, it can be a detour to a hospital. The betrayal here isn't abstract, it's personal, direct, and cruel. To take the dollar of someone already calculating coins at checkout and give them poison in return? That's not failure, that's contempt. What makes it worse is the false front. Dole floods its marketing with terms like safety chain and compliance certifications as though slogans could disinfect machinery. They wave mobile-based QA systems like talismans, but technology doesn't matter when the culture underneath is corroded. You can't polish rot with buzzwords. And yet, grocery aisles remain filled with Dole's smiling logos, as if history itself has been composted and forgotten. The future doesn't look better unless something changes. If years of recalls, deaths, and lawsuits couldn't force a permanent transformation, what will? Another outbreak? More lawsuits? Or worse, a silent spread that evades detection long enough to inflict damage too large to tally. When a company survives scandal after scandal without systemic reform, the logical prediction is not safety, it's escalation. So what can ordinary Americans do? You don't have to swear off salads, just swear off complacency. Safer alternatives exist. Organic Girl salad kits have tighter sourcing chains and smaller scale facilities with better transparency. Taylor Farms' organic lines, while not perfect, have stricter independent audits than Dole. Or for those able, skip the plastic altogether. Buy whole heads of lettuce or spinach at farmers markets, rinse, chop, and store them yourself. At least then you know the only hands that touched your food were your own. Dole once tried to brand itself as the king of greens, but looking at their history, it feels less like a crown and more like a revolving door of negligence. Next time you see that bright green label, don't just ask, is it fresh? Ask the darker question, is it safe? Or is it history repeating itself, dressed in lettuce leaves? Number 4. Saladada. Sometimes danger doesn't roar, it whispers from the produce aisle. In June 2024, Saladada Foods LLC quietly recalled roughly 40 spinach products across multiple brands after routine testing exposed listeria contamination. No flashing headlines, no emergency broadcasts, just dry FDA notices trickling into obscurity. Picture buying greens for dinner, only to learn weeks later you'd been hosting an invisible guest at your table. The scale was staggering, though disguised under a dozen labels. Saladada, Gaia, Full Circle, Farmer Direct, Uncle Vinny's, Bogopah, Greens Bulk, Spring Mix. That patchwork of names meant shoppers thought they had choices, when in reality they were funneling into the same risky source. A false marketplace of diversity, where every aisle led to the same contaminated fields. For consumers, it wasn't just spinach being sold, it was illusion wrapped in plastic, and the betrayal cuts deepest for the most vulnerable. Retirees on fixed incomes, laborers grabbing a cheap bag after long shifts. These are not people chasing gourmet luxuries. A 99-cent bag of spinach is supposed to be nutrition made simple. Instead, it turned refrigerators into pathogen incubators. Imagine seniors sprinkling it over a modest dinner, believing they were eating heart healthy while unknowingly gambling with the very health they're trying to preserve. That isn't an accident, it's cruelty by negligence. Dig deeper and the rot spreads into the supply chain itself. Saladada may be the name on the recall, but the contamination reflects a much larger problem. Outsourcing food safety. Retailers slapped their store labels on Saladada's products, confident the supplier carried the burden. They outsourced trust to the weakest link. It mirrors the Dole scandals of years past, except this time the crisis arrived under lower volume, dodging public outrage. The silence is strategic. A scandal that never reaches mainstream news spares corporations reputational bruises, but leaves consumers in the dark. Consider the biology of spinach. These leaves grow low, vulnerable to runoff, floodwater, or contaminated irrigation. Without meticulous hygiene, they are natural landing pads for bacteria. Add shortcuts in washing, reused water systems, or aging equipment, and you've created an assembly line where pathogens ride shotgun. Regulators know this risk, yet oversight remains patchy, with inspections sparse and recalls delayed. It's like constructing levees out of sandbags and pretending they'll hold back the sea. Why does this matter more for low-income Americans? Because wealthier shoppers often buy whole heads of greens, or pricier greenhouse-grown organics, while bargain spinach dominates the freezers and fridges of those living paycheck to paycheck. For them, the word organic on a bag feels like safety. Yet too often it's a marketing sticker on a broken process. The people least able to afford hospitalization end up absorbing the highest risk. That is not a food chain, it's a hierarchy of sacrifice. What happens if the trend continues? If recalls stay buried in bulletins while pathogens cycle silently through supply chains, we face not just scattered hospitalizations, but the potential for outbreaks that devastate entire communities. Every quiet recall without accountability lays the groundwork for something louder, deadlier, and harder to contain. The data is clear. Repeat contamination in greens has been tied to poor agricultural practices, yet enforcement is reactive, not preventive. And when prevention lags, the vulnerable pay. So what's the better path forward? Consumers can choose brands with stronger records. Earthbound Farm Organic Baby Spinach is one example, with smaller scale processing and tighter lot tracing systems. Taylor Farms also maintains a more transparent recall record than Saladada. Or skip the middlemen altogether, buy fresh bunches from local growers, rinse thoroughly, blanch if needed, and freeze them yourself. It takes effort, but at least you're not trusting a paper-thin label to shield you from systemic negligence. Here's the haunting truth. When a bag of spinach becomes a vessel for betrayal, every crunch feels less like health and more like hazard. Saladada's recall is not just about one brand slipping, it's about a system content to gamble with lives under the banner of convenience. You thought you were biting into vitamins. Instead, you were chewing on corporate apathy. Number 5. Twin City corn. The recall notice came like a footnote in August 2023. Twin City Foods Inc. withdrew its frozen super sweet corn and mixed vegetables after tests found Listeria monocytogenes. The product sat in freezers coast to coast under labels like Kroger, Food Lion, and Signature Select. No illnesses reported, said the FDA, but the absence of cases isn't proof of safety. If you had a bag, the advice was simple. Toss it or take it back. What the bulletin didn't capture was the silent storm brewing behind that frozen aisle. This wasn't a glitch, it was negligence hidden behind routine. One lab caught the contamination, but only after shipments had already spread across millions of dinner plates. Think of it, one compromised line, many different store brands, all funneling the same tainted kernels into households. Families thought they were buying budget-friendly staples. What they bought instead was false reassurance dressed in store packaging, and this cuts deeper for working class and retired Americans. A bag of frozen corn isn't a luxury item, it's a cheap standby, the filler that stretches casseroles or adds color to midweek soups. It's not meant to be exciting, it's meant to be safe. But when safety cracks, the betrayal doesn't just strike the wallet, it pierces trust. The dinner table becomes an ambush, and faith in everyday food vanishes overnight. The ripple effect stretches beyond that year. Many people buy bulk, stacking bags deep into chest freezers. By the time the recall filtered out in hushed tones, some families had already eaten the product. Maybe at a church potluck, maybe at Thanksgiving sides, maybe in a retiree's quiet supper. Listeria doesn't shout, it lurks, waiting for weak immune systems to crumble. What makes it worse is corporate silence. Twin City Foods didn't face the spotlight. The recall barely left trade bulletins. The story stayed quiet because private label recalls rarely grab headlines. That's how branded visibility works. Big volume, small accountability. So what's the safer path? Look for smaller producers with transparent sourcing. Truly grass-frozen corn, for example, comes from farmer cooperatives that publish test results. It costs more, but it's cheaper than risking hospital bills. Because in the end, no family should sit down to dinner only to realize the side dish came laced with betrayal. Number 6. Grimway Farms, November 2024. Grimway Farms, one of America's biggest carrot suppliers, issued a sweeping recall of organic whole and baby carrots. The trigger? Possible contamination with E. coli O121:H19. These weren't boutique veggies. Bags labeled Bunny Love, Cal Organic, and Good and Gather sat in refrigerators nationwide, shipped as far as Puerto Rico and beyond. Consumers were told to discard them immediately. The press release read calm, but beneath that calm was a storm. For millions of families, carrots are the guilt-free snack, the healthy filler slipped into lunchboxes or served at senior centers. Add the word organic and trust deepened. To discover those bright orange bags could harbor bacteria capable of kidney failure, bloody diarrhea, or hemolytic uremic syndrome. That's not disappointment, it's betrayal in its rawest form. E. coli O121 is not some trivial stomach bug. It can disable, even kill, especially children, older adults, and those with fragile immunity. And yet Grimway's halo of green branding masked the reality. Harvesting and packing lines may have been compromised by runoff, water systems, or unsanitized equipment. Industrial farming dressed in organic clothes still cut corners, and the bill came due at the consumer's table. Scale makes this worse. Organic carrots were marketed as premium, yet processed through pipelines large enough to send contaminated product to countless households. Seniors stretching pensions thought they were buying safety. Parents balancing grocery bills thought they were investing in their kids' health. Instead, they might have been serving up contamination, washed, peeled, bagged, and sold with a smile. And the recall itself? Whispered through FDA bulletins and retailer notices, not blasted on evening news. Many households likely never heard. Illness may have been shrugged off as just the flu. The invisible danger never linked to those carrot sticks. Safer alternatives exist. Mann's organic carrots, for example, are produced in smaller facilities with stronger traceability and pack date coding. Yes, a few cents more, but compared to medical bills or funerals, it's a cheaper price. The sting remains. Carrots should symbolize health and simplicity. Grimway turned them into weapons of trust collapse. Crunch once and innocence shattered. Number 7. Boar's Head. When people think of deli meats, they often imagine tradition, thin slices, savory aroma, and a name that's been whispered for decades across American counters. But in the summer of 2024, that image shattered like glass. Boar's Head, a brand that wrapped itself in prestige, was forced into one of the largest recalls in U.S. history. Over 7 million pounds of liverwurst, ham, salami, bologna, and bacon vanished overnight after Listeria claimed at least 10 lives and hospitalized nearly 60. Behind the shiny deli case lay a nightmare that regulators had ignored for too long. The filth didn't appear out of nowhere. USDA inspectors had filed 69 non-compliance reports at the Jarrett, Virginia plant in less than a year. Black mold coated walls, condensation dripped straight onto meat. Insects swarmed pickling vats. Rust ate through cracked floors, and residue from previous shifts clung to equipment like a warning no one wanted to hear. This wasn't a food plant, it was a mausoleum disguised as a factory. And yet, despite report after report, the plant kept running. That wasn't oversight, it was willful blindness. Then came the victims. Between May and November, people who thought they were buying a quick sandwich ingredient ended up in hospital wards. Elderly retirees, pregnant women, cancer patients with fragile immune systems. 10 never came home. In one case, a widow received $4 million in settlement for her husband's death. That payout doesn't restore trust. It buys silence. These were not headlines blasted with sirens. They were tragedies filed away in court documents. And many families settled quietly, pressured by a system designed to favor corporations with endless legal funds. Justice was not served. It was processed, wrapped, and hidden like spoiled meat behind plastic. Timing worsened the wound. The first recall was issued in late July, only to be expanded by the end of the month. That gap of days when households kept stacking sandwiches and frying bacon, was deadly. Each delay is a wager, and the people paying were those least equipped to absorb another blow. Working class and retired Americans who buy deli meats because they're affordable. Filling and familiar. Imagine discovering that what you thought was a comfort food was in fact a weapon sitting in your fridge. The ethical betrayal cuts even deeper. Boar's Head's lawyers fought tooth and nail to move lawsuits into Virginia, a jurisdiction viewed as more corporate-friendly, effectively exhausting grieving families already drowning in loss. That's not accountability, that's tactical cruelty. Meanwhile, news outlets reported that the Jarrett plant, after all the blood spilled and violations exposed, was still on track to reopen. A little bleach here, some PR polish there, and suddenly the brand expects consumers to forget. But the rot isn't only in the walls, it's in the corporate culture that let those walls fester in the first place. Step back and the scandal becomes bigger than one brand. It's a brutal reminder of how capitalism treats food safety. Keep costs low, keep shelves stocked, and let consequences trickle down to the weakest. In this economy, retirees scraping by on fixed incomes can't always choose the higher shelf. They trust legacy brands because they feel familiar. But familiarity, as we now see, can be fatal. So where does that leave the consumer staring at the deli counter? Safer paths exist. Applegate Naturals cold cuts offer organic sourcing and independent safety testing, and while pricier, they come with fewer recalls. Another alternative is True Story Organic Deli Meats, available in many national retailers, emphasizing transparent auditing and better sanitation practices. For those able, even freshly sliced deli meats from regional cooperatives or local butchers who depend on direct accountability are a stronger safeguard than trusting a giant that forgot who it feeds. Boar's Head once bragged in ads, "Nobody cuts like the pros." But in 2024, the only thing they cut was trust, and those slices, unlike their deli meats, can never be packaged again. Truth this raw can't stay hidden. Subscribe now, join our voice, and demand safer food before the next betrayal strikes.
Thanks a lot for sticking with us to the very end. If you found this video useful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss any daily uploads. And now, go ahead and explore some of our top recommended videos popping up on your screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next one.